Hey there, everybody. I'm Jeff. This is Tabletop Toolbox, and thank you for joining me for episode number 22 of the Weekly Ratchet. Today, we're going to talk all about board game conventions, especially Dice Tower East, which I just flew back in from yesterday. And boy, are my arms tired. Oh, we can do better than that. And boy, are my arms tired. Hey there, folks, and welcome back to Tabletop Toolbox and the Weekly Ratchet. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It has been a very hectic and busy and crazy week. I just came back from Dice Tower East, as I mentioned here at the top of the show, and it was an interesting experience, but it was bookended on each end by absolutely terrible travel situations. I flew out of here Monday afternoon out of Richmond. My flight was delayed before I even left, and then it was delayed again, so I missed my connecting flight, and then I sat in the Charlotte airport for something like 4 or 5 hours before catching a flight at 1 a.m., landing in Orlando there at something like 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. It was exhausting, and then almost the same thing happened on the way home. I didn't get home this morning here to the house until about 1 a.m., so I'm really tired, but it was a great convention. I got to see Joey Evans do a magic comedy show, which was a lot of fun. I got to see Grant Lyons do a board game themed comedy show, which was also just fantastic. And so a lot happening there. Also, in this past week, a lot of you got to see my top 100 games out on the Dice Tower. That series wrapped up just yesterday, starting the Monday prior. And so I was kind of on the channel for Jeff Week, as I called it without any permission from the crew. However, everyone thought it was great, so no problems there. But I want to thank all of you who commented. I got a ton of new subscribers over the past week, especially just the past few days, and so welcome all of you who are possibly joining us here for the first time. This is the Weekly Ratchet, a segment where I do just a conversation about board games. I talk about some games I've recently acquired. I have a question of the week segment, and then I'll usually talk about some recently played games. And with that being said, let's kick off the show. So Dice Tower East is something of a standard convention. There was an expo hall with a couple of publishers, some designers, some local merchants selling dice. There was someone selling food. Just all kinds of stuff was there, but it wasn't a main portion of the entire convention. In fact, it was a rather small expo hall, the smallest I think I've ever seen at any convention. It is mostly an absolutely massive room of people playing games, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. However, since I was flying down there and staying in this hotel, which the Dice Tower did provide, which was just fantastic, and I'm very, very appreciative, but food was very expensive. I had to pay for travel, so I didn't do a lot of shopping. In fact, I only bought one game after I played a demo of it, and this is Path of Civilization. This is by Fabien Gridel, who is a French designer. I got to meet Fabien. In fact, I've got his autograph right here on the box. And this is a Civilization game. I don't really know what to compare it to, although it does some mostly mainstream mechanisms. You've got a number of cards that you're sort of choosing from at the beginning of each round of this game. You've got 5 things that you can choose from. 2 that do one thing, 2 that do another, and 1 that gets discarded. That's fairly common. There's a lot of simultaneous play. There's a lot of, like I said, very basic mechanisms, but I feel like they're stitched together in a good way. I'm not going to call it necessarily unique, but I did like what the game did. It plays fairly quickly. This says 20 minutes per player. It took us a little longer for a 4-player game, but we kind of taught while we played, which definitely bogs down the experience, but I did like it quite a bit. It doesn't have the most amazing presentation. The art on the box looks pretty good, although the title is Generica, the board game, if we're being honest. But like I said, I really enjoyed it, so I went ahead and I picked up a copy. I got Fabian's signature, and even the lady who taught us how to play the game, her name is Ava, I got her to autograph her promo card, which they included for me as well. So I'm looking forward to playing this a little bit more, maybe even this upcoming weekend, and I'll be chatting more about Path of Civilization. Now, the other thing I thought was pretty cool is that I came across a designer there in the expo hall, and he was promoting a game called Solarian Foundations of Empires. He had a brand new prototype copy there in the expo hall, and that copy is now right here. I had a good chat with Tassin, is his name. Good chat with him. He kind of gave me a little demo of the game there at the table, and then he was working with his publisher, and they agreed to send the copy home with me so that I can do a preview video here on the channel. This isn't coming out to crowdfunding until probably September, but I'm going to be focusing on this here over the next few weeks, trying to get a good impression of this. It is a 4X space-themed deck building game. I'm pausing for all of you watching this right now going, oh yeah, that's definitely Jeff's kind of game. Absolutely. It would scratch every itch. Now this too doesn't have the most amazing presentation. The card art is still being developed a little bit. I think that there's a little bit of room for improvement on how the cards look, but the game looks pretty nice. The components look pretty neat. And again, a space-themed 4X deck builder. Do I need to say anything else? Also has a neoprene mat, which is just behind me on the other table. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. And then lastly, just before I left the convention, I saw a copy of Isle of Skye Big Box sitting on a table. I made a comment to Mr. Emery, who is a new employee over at the Dice Tower. I said, oh, this is the one Alexander Pfister game that I really like. And he goes, oh, good, you can have it because it's mine. I have 2 copies, and he doesn't really like the Big Box edition as much as just the base game. And so he just let me have it, and I'm very appreciative to Emery for that. So I now have my favorite Alexander Pfister game, and that is it for newly acquired games. Let's get to question of the week. Kicking off question of the week. Last week, I asked you to tell me about your experience with board game conventions. Did you go to conventions? Did you want to go to conventions? Maybe what your favorite convention was. I sort of left it open-ended for folks to answer however they would like, and I got a good variety of answers. Let's go ahead and get to them. Up first was Omar Hernandez, who says he frequently goes to the Dice Tower Retreat and PAX Unplugged, which is in Philadelphia. He hopes to visit Level Up one day and says that he wishes he could go to more conventions, but that would mean less money for board games. And no one wants to have less money for board games, so I can certainly understand that. Now, for some reason, Omar, I thought that you were coming to Dice Tower East this year. I was kind of keeping an eye out for you, but didn't see you. So maybe I misunderstood a previous comment, but I'm definitely looking forward to meeting you at the Dice Tower Retreat, playing some games. I'll see you then. Up next was Thomas Grieve, who said that Gen Con is fantastic because of the interactions with publishers and designers and special events, and so it's his favorite convention by far. He also said that he likes to support small local conventions as well. I was blown away by Gen Con when I went last year, but I was a good bit disappointed by how much Indianapolis just seeks to capitalize on that event. Everything is so unbelievably expensive, and I don't know, I felt it a little difficult to support the city as much as they were sort of demanding to get paid, by us who are coming to that city for the convention. It wasn't just game prices and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, it was parking, hotels, I understand, are absolutely insane. And in fact, I owe it all to Katie and Greg of the Meeple Society, who put me up at Gen Con last week. I couldn't have done it without them. So thank you very much for that. I won't be there this year for that simple reason. It's just too expensive. I also can't really take that much time off from work, which is getting very crazy right now. But anyways, that was my experience with Gen Con last year. Simulation Chris said that he dreads a large convention, that he'd be afraid he would buy more than would fit into his game or apartment. That wasn't the dreaded reason that I was expecting. However, yes, when I left Gen Con last year, my Camaro was kind of low riding a little bit in the back from all the games and such that I had stuffed into the trunk. Wonderflonium said he goes to Dice Tower East and Gen Con each year, and that he frequents the flea markets at the conventions and also demos of crowdfunded games. I don't know if you were at Dice Tower East this past week. I didn't see you there. I sure hope I didn't miss you. I've never really seen. So there were apparently flea markets at Dice Tower East this week. I didn't get to any of them. They started really early in the morning, and I was kind of doing some more late shift stuff, and so I didn't get to the flea markets. But from what I gathered, there wasn't a lot of good stuff there, or at least it got snatched up very, very, very early. Wayne Kruger didn't post an answer to question of the week this week, but I met him at Dice Tower East, and so I thought I would share this picture of us. Thanks for hanging out and saying hello. It was great to see you there. Scrub Kid 6602 is a first-time poster here to the Weekly Ratchet, and he had a very interesting comment. He said he doesn't really go to conventions as they are very loud, they are very crowded, and he gets anxious when meeting new people. He also said he went to a convention in his home country and went to a room where a lot of gaming was happening, but that nobody noticed him, and he left shortly after feeling very alone. I felt that this was a very important topic to kind of bring up. I think as I was kind of reflecting on this, first of all, thank you very much for the comment, Scrub Kid. Welcome, and I'm glad that you are here. I think that this is a very common issue, first of all. Board gaming, I think, almost by its very nature, is going to attract quieter people, people who like to kind of get into their head and put themselves into that game and focus on that game. They probably see gaming as an escape a bit from reality, as often video gamers do as well. And so I think that you're definitely going to get those sort of socially anxious folks, those maybe socially awkward folks. You know, you get a mix of everyone for sure, but I certainly have seen at the retreat and at Dice Tower East and other conventions I've gone to, you see a lot of those people who they work very well in their groups and they have a hard time stepping out of that group. And so if you don't go with a group, or if you don't have a group, then a convention like that is going to be very difficult. And I think it's a two-pronged solution, honestly, from both sides of this equation. I certainly understand being uncomfortable meeting new people. I think that it's fair to say, though, that to some extent, you've got to find a little bit of will on the inside to just step out and say, hey, can I join you? Or, oh, I like that game. You know, have you played it before? Something like that. Just find a simple question, a conversation starter about a game, something that you probably are more familiar with than another subject. You know, if you saw me drinking a beer, you're probably going to be less inclined to go, oh, is that an IPA? I love IPA. You know, it may not be something that you're as familiar with. So if you see an avenue where you can identify a topic of common interest, like a specific game or a designer, that might be a good way to just break that ice. And if it doesn't go well, if that person doesn't respond favorably, just find an exit and leave. The honest truth of the matter is that there are thousands of people there, and you're going to be more bothered by that than they will. And so you can just shrug it off. They're going to forget about it. And you can forget about it too if that conversation doesn't go well. What you're probably more likely to find is someone's going to say, oh yeah, I love this game. Yeah, what do you think about this? Or have you played this game from the same designer? Or have you played this with the same theme? And they're going to trigger that conversation with you just as well because you have that common interest. And so I have found that if you just give it that little step, if you just inch a little bit into that direction, you'll probably find yourself having a great conversation, sitting and having a great game. On the other side, I think that it's important for folks sitting at a convention, playing a game, even if you're at a full table and you're into the game, if someone comes up and they're kind of looking around or they're looking at your table, looking at what you're playing, strike a conversation with them. Hey, have you played this? Have you seen this game before? What do you think? Or you know, how are you having fun at the con? What's the best game you've played here yet so far? Oh, you haven't played one. Well, hey, we're almost done with this game. Why don't you stick around and we'll play a game with you? We've got to try to be welcoming, and we've got to try and understand that not everyone's going to be at that level that we might be at to, you know, just be open and converse with folks. We've got to try and give them a chance to step into that equation. And I will say that I'm somewhere in that middle ground, but I'm actually more on the quiet side myself. In fact, I did a lot this past week at Dice Tower East, just kind of walking around. If I saw someone who was looking for a teach, I would try to help. I would look for the green flags. We had these flags up. Yellow means you need help with a teach. Green flags means you're looking for other players. And I would look for both. I would try to find a game that I could join in with that I knew that I maybe wanted to play, or a yellow flag that I could help, you know, teach a game. But a lot of times I kind of walked around, I saw games already being played that I was bummed that I didn't have a chance to join in at. I actually sat down a couple times with flags that I didn't get people to join me with, and that left me feeling same thing, a little alone, a little cold. I didn't go with anyone there. I know almost everyone from the Dice Tower, but they're all very busy running around running this convention, and so I also felt quite a bit alone at Dice Tower East this year. And for me, I can certainly say that I had plenty of good experiences. I will continue to draw on those good experiences, and I will, try to remember the good more so than I would remember any of the bad. I don't know if that helps you a whole bunch, Scrub Kid, but I want you to know that you are not alone here on Tabletop Toolbox. So thank you for joining us, and I hope to hear from you again. And let's see, last up is Kay, who said that she wants to attend Dice Tower East for the first time next year, but doesn't want to go to conventions just to buy games, and she doesn't want conventions to be too crowded. Dice Tower East was pretty crowded. In fact, I'll flash a couple pictures up here real quick of the sheer size of the ballroom that we were in, and Tom revealed late Saturday, I think Saturday, that there will be another ballroom that they'll have next year for additional gaming, which is going to open up probably room for a few thousand more attendees, which is kind of crazy. But, like I said, there were times moving around that it was difficult for me to find a place, not necessarily find a place to sit. There were always open tables, but a lot of times because I was by myself and I was trying to sit down with a game that I was hoping people would join me with, and I felt like it would be so easy to get lost in that crowd that I just didn't bother. And maybe that's a reflection on myself, right? I probably just need to be a little bit more gutsy, maybe a little bit more patient, and just sit there and see what happens. But that's not exactly my strong point, so I will see what I can do. However, I can certainly agree with the crowded issue and not wanting to just buy games. I don't know if I'll go to Dice Tower East next year. It's way too early to say, but hopefully I can meet you, Kay, and play some games with you here sometime soon. That'd be great. So anyways, for myself, I have gone to Gen Con, now Dice Tower East. I've done PAX Unplugged several times. I go every year, but I just go for a day because it's like 4 hours away. So I leave really early in the morning. I do some shopping. I don't really go there for playing games because I don't really know anyone who's there. For the most part, last year it was insanely busy and crowded, and I actually just kind of stayed away from that end of the convention hall. I will likely go again this year, again, just to kind of see what's new, maybe grab a couple of games and then head home. I also have a friend in the Baltimore area that I try to hang out with in the evenings when I go to PAX Unplugged. And then I've also gone to the Dice Tower Retreat several times now. I will be going this year. The Retreat is not a convention. I don't like to call it a convention. They refer to it as a convention, but it is just a large ballroom with 2,000 some odd games from the Dice Tower library, and you just grab a game off the shelf and you go play. In fact, it's even more relaxed than Dice Tower East because at the Dice Tower East convention, I'm assuming West as well, you have to check out your games. They scan the game, they scan your badge, and that way they know who has the games. They don't even do that at the retreat. You just grab them off the shelf and you sit down and you play. In fact, a couple times I grabbed a game, I started to walk out with it. It was like, oh wait, I have to check this out. I just was not used to it. But I really love the retreat. It's a great chance for me to get caught up on the new games of that year. I've also got a lot of friends who I've met there over the years, like Katie and Greg in the Meeple Society, and so I'm really looking forward to going this year because of the fact that I didn't have as welcoming, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but I didn't have as social an experience, that's probably the right word, at Dice Tower East as I usually have at the retreat. And so there were plenty of games that I saw on the shelves and I was like, I'm going to wait until the retreat where I know I can get this played. And so I'm really looking forward to it more this year than I have in years past. So that is my experience with conventions. I am hoping to get to Origins maybe next year, and I really hope I can get to Essen someday, although I understand that it makes Gen Con look like a gas station. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, for next week, in honor of the Dice Tower Top 100 Games segment that I had out last week, my question is to tell me your favorite game. I also, though, after attending the comedy show with Grant Lyon, he made a joke about, everyone talks about your favorite game, but what we also don't necessarily think to ask about is what is your least favorite game, because you can tell an awful lot about whether you're going to have gaming interests with someone with those two extremes. You go, oh, I love Brass Birmingham. Oh, that's great. But I hate Gloomhaven. I don't know if we should hang out, And that was kind of the joke. And so I would love to hear your favorite game and your least favorite game. Try to keep it to just those two. Don't give me a big list so I can try and get through everybody. I'm also going to issue a little bit of a challenge, okay? Every week I get all these comments, and I love getting them. Thank you so much. But I always get about 10 or 11, and I want to break that record. So if you're watching this, I get hundreds of views. So if you're watching this, just give me a comment. Let me know your favorite and least favorite game. You don't have to tell me a big story about it. Just tell me your least and most favorite games, and I would love to share the comment here. I'd love to break that record and get a little bit more interaction here on the channel. So that is the question of the week for next week. And guess what? That's it. That's all I'm going to tackle here on this episode of the Weekly Ratchet. I've got a ton of recently played games, but I'm going to do a separate video here on the channel this week. I'm going to make it come out here very soon, recapping some of the games that I played at the Dice Tower East and sharing some of those experiences. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to capturing some interest from Dice Tower East, attendees. And yeah, I'm going to make that a good video, I'm hoping, so stay tuned. That's it, folks. I'll see you next week. Cheers.